Okay, so we've got Elena Carr and Sydney Jane Roberts with us again tonight, doctoral students at the UCD Clinical Psychology Program, and they are going to lead us in our session 3. And you guys, I'm going to, the slides aren't quite working tonight. I can't seem to have join me up and the slides at the same time, so I'm going to flip over to the slide. But let me see if maybe I can make you guys presenters. No, I don't think I can. Okay. Back and forth. Second, I need to share the screen. Okay, can everyone see the slides that says I can't see. Session 3 coping?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. So we'll have you actually click the next slide for us, please, Cindy.
Good.
Wonderful. So welcome back, everyone, to our 3rd session. The theme of today's session is going to be coping, which I know a lot of you in past sessions had indicated, okay, well, what if, like last session, what if my thoughts are not distorted? What do I do about that? So this session is really going to help focus on when real stressors are presented to you, such as having a diagnosis of scleroderma, and different ways that we can cope with that. Because oftentimes when faced with a different chronic illness, we don't always feel like we can problem solve it or come up with solutions. There's a lot of unknowns, uncontrollables. So today's session will really be touching on that. And just to backpedal a little bit, we wanted to check in on how the in-between session activities were. Has anyone been able to listen to the autogenics recordings that Cindy had sent out to you all? Okay. Has anyone been able to do diaphragmatic breathing or engage in any type of breathing exercise that we've gone over in the last 2 sessions, or a variation of your own?
Don't forget to unmute yourself if you want to jump in.
You're also, I think that we suggested doing pleasurable activities and suggested that you guys work through the stress process diagram on your own. Did anyone try those activities?
Okay, so we'll just move forward with today's session. So Cindy, I'll have you click the next slide for us, please. So this is just a review of what we've covered in the last couple of sessions. So you can see the photo of the cartoon of this woman who's, feeling really under pressure, and then there's also someone who decides to take a nap under pressure. And this is really targeting, how when we have that fight or flight response, there might be some avoidant behaviors, such as taking a nap, to not really address any of the action items that you may need to do or the different stresses that you might be facing. And then the next cartoon is of this shark and this fish. I'm sensing a Finding Nemo type of cartoon depiction here. And you can see, again, really looking at that fight or flight response when there's, the stereotypical bear in the woods, or for this one, it's shark around you. You have that immediate stress response. So a lot of blood flow is going right to your muscles. You're getting tense. You're ready to fight or to flee. And then you can see with the anxiety cartoon, that fight or flight response can be triggered just from your thoughts. So that really goes to a lot of the content we were discussing last week in terms of how our anxiety or irrational thoughts can really propel our emotional state in the moment and how that can really impact us over time. So this little fish who keeps thinking, what if this big bad fish or shark keeps coming out today? That might be a repetitive thought, and maybe this fish lives in waters that are not shark infested.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about that?
Yeah, I think it's just a really good, funny illustration of the effect of how our thoughts can create stress in our lives, even when there is not an immediate stressor in front of us right there. And it also kind of speaks to the impact of long-term chronic stress on, our quality of life and well-being. Yeah.
So, Cindy, we'll have you go to the next slide for us, please. And we'll have you
probably click again.
Yeah.
And maybe one more time.
Okay.
So yeah, like Elena said, today we're going to be talking about coping. So coping might have many different meanings to different people. Definitions of coping usually relate to our past experiences with different stressful situations. And we tend to cope with things by either changing the way that we think about a situation or altering our behavior in reference to the situation. So changing the way we think or changing the way we behave. And although this might be the first time that we formally introduced the word coping, this is probably not the first time that coping has come into play. Rather, we have taken steps, in the past couple of sessions to increase our we will take steps to increase our everyday coping strategies. And some of those we've already done in past sessions, such as increasing our awareness of stress patterns, learning some relaxation skills, and starting to challenge some of the distorted thoughts that we've been having. So today, in this session, we're going to be looking at coping itself in a slightly different way, and we're going to break that down into several different key aspects. So we're going to introduce and define coping, and we're going to talk about ways to increase our awareness of different types of stressors, so those being either controllable or uncontrollable, and then the different coping responses that go along with each of those types of stressors. And then we're going to try to get into identifying your own coping styles and ways to improve those coping strategies. I think this is the next slide.
So, oh, great. You're so on top of it, Cindy. Thank you. So when we think about coping, coping can be seen as our ability to handle different demands you face, even when they seem more difficult than what you perceive your ability to handle. So oftentimes when we cope with stressful demands, we tend to do it in two ways. So you can see how there's controllable aspects of the stressful situation and uncontrollable. So when we really think about this, controllable aspects are things that are often seen as problem-solving aspects of a stressful situation that might be more within your control, meaning there are certain behaviors that can hopefully reduce the stressor. Then there's uncontrollable aspects. So when you think of uncontrollable aspects, they might be unpredictable situations or, there's no definitive outcome from the stressful situation. A really good example of that is a stressful situation such as having a diagnosis of scleroderma. There is often controllable aspects of having scleroderma, and then there's also uncontrollable aspects. So with uncontrollable, I often think of emotional uncontrollable stressors. You can't problem solve to reduce the emotions. You might need to use different types of coping techniques. And oftentimes when we do this, really thinking about helpful coping strategies to minimize the distress you feel. So if you feel like, you're trying to cope, but yet the distress is increasing, maybe the helpful coping strategy isn't really being applied in the situation. And we might need to take a step back to sort of revisit how we might approach the situation differently. So you can see with this exercise, we're thinking about an immediate stressor, such as a blizzard coming or issued for Denver, which is a little relevant because we have had some ups and downs with the snow these last couple of weeks. So I just wanted to get a sense from you, what sort of controllable aspects of this stressful situation could you list?
Well, so you could probably think of some as well. I think, one controllable aspect of this situation is, getting prepared for it. If you feel like you need to get food or extra water, or if there's a concern the electricity might go out, getting batteries for flashlights or other kind of essential needs like that would be one way to prepare for it.
Yeah, so that's really a good example of how you're appraising the situation and seeing if you have the resources to mitigate the stress. So those are really great examples of, all right, what is within my control that I can best prepare for whatever this blizzard brings. Some uncontrollable aspects, again, things that are outside of our reach, maybe we don't have the resources for it, is how long the blizzard's going to last. Maybe you have no control over how that might affect the temperature in your home. Also, if the electricity goes out too, that might be an uncontrollable as well. So again, just really thinking of different coping strategies and resources and how they might play a substantial role in affecting how much stress affects you. So again, just really thinking in terms of this appraisal process, looking at the immediate stressor, and then whether you have the resources to really reduce that stress. If so, that's most likely a controllable aspect of the situation. And if not, it might be more uncontrollable, where there might be different emotional resources for coping you can implement.
Does anyone have any questions about the difference between those two, controllable versus uncontrollable?
Not a very chatty group tonight.
No, it's okay. But yeah, feel free to jump in anytime. So yeah, another way to look at coping is to consider how a person might cope with a stressful situation. So let me just make sure. Cindy, would you mind clicking to the next slide? And then I think you click a couple more times. Okay. Like I said, another way to look at it is how a person might cope with a stressful situation. So coping mechanisms in general can be defined as either problem-focused or emotion-focused activities. So problem-focused strategies involve changing a problem or an aspect of the situation that is really causing distress, so kind of taking action. So looking at these, can you identify one of these pictures that might be a more like problem-focused type activity? So the only one that might fit with that is our little dog doing some up dog yoga. Sometimes physical activity is a good example that can fit into both problem-focused and emotion-focused coping. So it can fit with problem-focused coping depending on the situation. If you're feeling fatigued, if you're having like physical pain, if you're, experiencing things where getting more physical activity can actually improve some of the problems you're having, then it can be counted as a problem-focused coping strategy. But it can also be emotion-focused because when we do yoga or meditation or some type of physical activity, it can also really improve our mood and also just bring us into a different space and help us manage that stress better. So then emotion-focused coping typically refers to the way that we handle and manage like the emotional responses that tend to come along with a stressful situation. So you can see the other two pictures we have here of Kim Kardashian crying. That might be an emotion-focused coping strategy. And sometimes crying can be really helpful depending on the situation. It kind of goes back to what Elena was saying about helpful versus unhelpful. And sometimes we do need like an emotional release, and it can be very helpful to us in dealing with whatever emotions are coming up in response to a stressful situation. But sometimes it can be unhelpful if we're, crying in response to a situation where a more problem-focused approach might help us decrease our stress. And then you can see another picture of someone eating a lot of ice cream, which I think, many of us could relate to kind of emotional eating. Like when we're feeling stressed, we just kind of go for those comfort foods and that kind of thing.
Right, which in the short term, eating a tub of ice cream, you might love it, you might love the flavor, right. You might get a quick spurt of relief. Mm-hmm. However, it might be more of a Band-Aid approach where you experience temporary relief from the stressor, but then also eating a tub of ice cream, you might feel fatigued, you might feel a little sick after eating that much ice cream. So there can be some long-term health consequences with poor eating as a stress response to different stressful situations. Mm-hmm. So Cindy, could you click for the next slide, please? Thank you. So this is just another way to really visually understand the difference between the two, problem-focused and emotion-focused. I do want to say that not everyone is balanced in between the two. You might look at this and think, oh, well, a lot of the way I handle stress is by coming up with a solution. Mm-hmm. And for people who might be heavier on the problem-focused side, that tends to be utilizing a lot more of that analytical process of your brain. So really being like a problem solver, coming up with goals, just trying to come up with a solution for different issues that might arise. And in the context of scleroderma, that might be choosing where you go to seek care, choosing who your doctor is, really doing that research to figure out, even with this illness, who can best sort of control or help me manage different symptoms. Then there's emotion-focused coping. So again, some people might be heavier on the emotion-focused coping. And that's really just regulating our emotional response to a stressful situation. So again, if we look at that in the context of scleroderma, these can be different ways that you try and reduce the emotional stressors of the unknown. So different ways to do that. If we think about that down dog doing yoga, certainly engaging in regular yoga or physical activity can be really helpful in just reducing the stress response in your body physiologically over time. But then also engaging in deep breathing exercises or meditation can really help reduce a stressful emotional response, or just reappraising or reframing the situation. So even if in the context of illness, it being stressful, looking at it as in, oh, I have a really great support network, or even though days are unexpected or unknown, my partner's there to help me when I need it, or I know that I'm capable of handling this to the best of my ability, even though it's really hard.
Cindy, would you mind clicking to the next slide? So, yeah, I think one of the things that is most important in talking about, you know, these different types of coping and the different types of stressors is making sure that whatever type of coping strategy you're using is a good fit with the controllability of the stressor. Because, you know, when the type of coping strategy that you're using is not a good match for whatever problem you're facing, then you might actually find that your stress does not decrease and may actually increase. And so it's really important that you're able to find that match between the coping strategy and the type of stressor so that you can better manage your stress level. So this is kind of bringing it back to the helpful versus not helpful, and kind of a just small chart to sort of help you see like where things fit in. So you'll see on the left-hand side you have like helpful and not helpful, and then along the top you have things that you can control and things that you can't control. And then we've got problem focused and emotion focused under that. So we can start looking at the things that you can control column. So, you know, this is thinking about a stressor where there's aspects of the situation where you can actually take action and make a change to decrease your stress. So a problem-focused coping strategy would be most helpful in that situation because it allows you to actually make some changes and then really decrease the level of stress you're experiencing. So some examples of that, good fit between helpful and things you can control situation are finding information, setting goals, making decisions, solving problems, asking for help. Some things that might not be helpful in dealing with an aspect of a situation that you can control would be ignoring the situation, trying not to deal with it, or trying to escape the problem by doing other activities. So like a lot of avoidance behaviors there. And then looking at aspects of a situation that you can't control, really, in those situations, the most helpful type of coping strategy is emotion-focused coping, because trying to find some solution to a problem that you can't solve is not going to make you less stressed. It will probably increase your stress. So in that situation, you might try to do things like reevaluate the situation. Maybe there's an aspect of it that you can change and that you just haven't seen yet. So kind of reevaluating it, for looking for those aspects that you can control, reframing your thoughts. So changing the way that you view the situation can often really help decrease stress in situations where you don't actually have control over it. Exercise is a really great way to manage stress in any situation where you don't have control over the situation, and it brings up a lot of emotions and stress because physiologically it helps to calm your stress level and can help you emotionally in the long run too. And then doing just other pleasurable activities like taking walks, getting a massage, meditating, practicing those relaxation techniques, being in the moment, writing, talking to a friend, seeking social support. And then some unhelpful strategies that might be more emotion focused would be things like overeating, drinking alcohol, abusing drugs, smoking, or just generally not taking care of yourself. Because when you start to do things where you let your self-care slip, then that really ends up just exacerbating the stress that you're already experiencing.
Yeah, and I'd also like to point out, you know, we're not perfect in all of these. So if you notice one night you do eat more ice cream and you notice that maybe that's a way to handle whichever stressor you're currently facing. That's okay. Just awareness is a big part of recognizing, oh, maybe I'm really engaging in this type of behavior to reduce the stress, and taking a step back and reevaluating, is there something else I could do instead? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Cindy, we'll have you click the next slide for us, please. Thank you. So after reviewing all of this, just wanted to get a sense of, after looking at the different coping strategies, if there's any ones in particular that you find yourself navigating more to.
I try and remember to kind of step back, just take a few deep breaths for a few minutes, and then kind of reassess the situation.
Okay, great. Yeah, so definitely more of the emotion-focused side of things, where you're reassessing the situation, trying to look at different viewpoints for how to handle the stress. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you find yourself being more problem-focused or emotion-focused when you are faced with stressful situations?
I think it depends on the situation, because I think sometimes it's easier to see a solution to the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And if not, then it might be more emotion focused.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, it depends is often the answer, because again, you don't have control over what the stressful situation will arise.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good point. And then also, are there certain situations that you usually use the helpful coping strategies?
Yeah. Again, I think it's if it's kind of maybe easy to see the solution, or at least think that there can be a solution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So if there are different situations you have control over, and again, I often think of control within a hospital setting in terms of what type of care you'll get. Those are a lot of helpful problem-solving, information-seeking types of situations and coping strategies. And in what situations do you find that you might engage in unhelpful strategies? So I can sort of answer this. We talked a lot for the emotion-focused, helpful, the self-care piece.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, I think we've all experienced this in our lives at some point or another. If the sleep or the eating 3 meals a day slips, you might notice unhelpful eating behaviors afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
They're just getting whatever's quick to satiate the hunger or alleviate any type of anxiety. And that might, in the long run, there might be some avoidance of starting to maintain different healthy behaviors, avoidance of going back to exercising, or really focusing on sleeping 8 hours a night.
Right. Or I know that some people will maybe like oversleep to avoid dealing with situations. Stress can make us feel tired already, but then maybe instead of handling something that we need to address, we might take a nap instead. Or on the flip side of that, if you're more on the you tend to think of yourself as like a problem solver and use more problem-focused coping strategies. Sometimes even like over-analyzing a situation, where when you've already done what you can do to address the situation, and you just keep trying to figure out, like, is there anything else that I can do? And that kind of like rumination cycle that people can get trapped in. that can also be another unhelpful coping strategy because you're not actually making any more progress in dealing with your stress. You're really just kind of holding it there with you by holding on to those problems when they're either something you've already addressed or it's something that you can't do anything about. Cindy, could you click to the next slide? So this is just a nice diagram that we have to kind of put all of this together. So you can, in the participant manual that we have that Cindy can distribute if you don't already have it, there is a copy of this, and you can, draw this diagram on additional paper or anything like that. But sometimes when we're faced with a difficult situation that we find especially stressful, it's helpful for us to kind of go through this flow chart, sort of like we've been doing throughout this session, and kind of evaluate the situation to see what are the pieces of the situation that we can control and what are the things that we can't control. And then from there, we can identify the helpful problem-focused strategies for the aspects that we can control and the helpful emotion-focused strategies for those aspects that we can't control. And so the goals of both of these things are to find the solutions to those things that can be solved so that they can help decrease our stress, and then to help manage our negative or distressing emotions that are caused by the stressful situation. So I know there's only a few of us on the call, but if anyone has a situation they have in mind or something that happened for them in the past week, something they might be dealing with right now, we can sort of go through this model together. Yeah. Well, we can probably find one since we're graduate students. Do you have anything that comes to mind?
Well, I think, walking through maybe the initial diagnosis of scleroderma.
That's a great example. So yeah, that can be our situation of receiving that diagnosis of scleroderma. So what might be some aspects of that situation that we can control?
Learning about it.
Yeah, that's great. So definitely that information seeking through learning about it.
Mm-hmm. Maybe choosing your doctors,
where you'll get treatment for it. And this one might be a little bit of both, but I understand that there's also support groups that the Scleroderma Foundation has. So joining a support group can be a problem focused because you're taking action, but also emotion focused because it can be really helpful in terms of being around people that share a similar story to yourself, or can just understand in your point of view or perspective what it's like to be diagnosed with that.
So far under like aspects of the situation that we can control, we've named our treatment options and our knowledge about the diagnosis, and then some problem-focused strategies to address both of those would be seeking out and choosing where you want to have your treatment done, or joining a Scleroderma group, and also educating yourself, finding resources, so seeking out that knowledge and support. So what about aspects of receiving that diagnosis are what aspects of that situation are out of our control.
Well, sometimes I think the progression, I know for everyone is very different. So that's something that's just completely out of control. And also, your emotional reaction to it. Your reaction right at diagnosis might be different than when you have it, 5 years in, 10 years in. It still, can be an intense emotional reaction regardless of where you are and how long you've had the illness. And certainly different ways that you can implement emotion-focused strategies is really, again, finding a support group, sharing a story with people with similar experiences, engaging in deep breathing or meditation practices, pleasurable activities can be really helpful, and just going back to things that you enjoyed for yourself, so sort of taking yourself out of the I'm someone who has an illness and just focusing on things that you enjoy.
Yeah, I think along those same lines, reframing our thoughts about the situation. I think especially when people are diagnosed with a chronic illness, the way you kind of see the diagnosis fitting into your life can make a huge impact on your emotional well-being and the stress that you feel. And also engaging in those self-care, those just basic self-care things of taking care of yourself physically and eating good foods and things like that. And yeah, to echo Elena's point about the relaxation, so just practicing those skills of learning how to relax and how to manage pain and stress when it comes up in that way. So really great things.
Yeah, and then also another thing that could be a mixture of the two is Cindy had mentioned the information-seeking component. So maybe seeking out information about what healthy foods might mitigate any inflammation response, and really focusing on nutrition that will be helpful with that.
Yeah. And also just a slight preview of next week, but another option that can be both problem-focused and emotion-focused in some ways is seeking out different types of social support. So seeking emotional support from loved ones or informational support, seeking information from your doctor, those can fall under, both problem-focused or emotion-focused categories. And next week, we're going to be talking all about social support and self-care because it's that important in your stress management. Yeah. Any questions about kind of this process and just being able to do this on your own with stressful situations that you encounter? Okay. Well, Cindy, I think you can click to the next slide. Yeah. So this is our relaxation technique that we are introducing for the week. So this week's exercise is called passive progressive muscle relaxation. And last week we recorded the autogenics relaxation. And Cindy, I believe did you email that out to everyone? Okay.
Yes, I did.
Okay, great. So I just didn't want to say you were going to post it somewhere. So she will email it out to the participants for tonight, and so that you can have that. And even though we're not going to go through it together right now, you can listen to it on your own and use it as often as you like. And we really encourage you to practice this throughout the week. So passive progressive muscle relaxation involves focusing your attention on different areas of the body and really using your breath to just release all of the tension in each area of your body until you have your entire body feeling in a really relaxed state. So it's a really great exercise. The recording that we will be sending to you is about 20 minutes, but you can also do this in a more condensed version. You know, if you're feeling tension in your shoulders, you can be sitting at your desk at work and just focus on the tension in your neck and shoulders. So there's a lot of flexibility in how to do this exercise.
And I'd also like to point out, so with this exercise, there's 4 different muscle groups that will be emphasized. So those muscle groups, you generally start with your left and right hands, arms, biceps, and then Cindy Jane, the audio recording, will go through different ways that you can just imagine tightening. We won't have you physically do tightening. And then find a sense of relief, just imagining that this tightness has gone away and you're fully relaxing in these muscle groups. Then the next muscle group is really focusing on the muscles in the neck and the face. So imagining tensing those, and then after tensing for a little while, releasing and relaxing and just imagining all this relaxation and tranquility that you feel once you release. The third muscle group is the muscles in your abdomen, your chest, and your back, so upper or lower back. And again, really focusing on imagining tensing and then releasing the tension and imagining just full tranquility and relaxation. And then the last muscle group is your right and left leg, so the upper thighs, your calves, and then your feet. So again, with that, just imagining the tensing and then the relaxation afterwards.
Does anybody have any questions about that, or how to get access to it, or anything like that?
And I'd also just like to say, if engaging in relaxation is relatively new for you, it's completely normal the first couple of times to not feel like, you know, you have this down 100%. I would say every time you do a relaxation exercise, it just varies. You could be doing this for many years, and it might be difficult to get fully engaged the first time. So just know that doing this daily over time, you might become more familiar with your own sort of avenue to really resonate with the exercise.
And we encourage you, when you do this exercise, to sort of rate yourself, like your level of tension or relaxation, on a scale of 0 to 10 before you do it, and then do the same thing after you do it. So if you rate your relaxation with 0 being no tension at all and 10 being the most extreme tension imaginable, just kind of take note of that, and then do your relaxation, and then kind of do the same evaluation again. And we think that can be really helpful to have you become aware of even small changes in your level of relaxation, because like Elena was saying, these things can sometimes take practice to really get the full benefit of a relaxation exercise, and it's helpful to see if you are making small changes to keep going with it.
Yeah. So Cindy, we'll have you click the next slide for us, please. So as we've done in the last 2 sessions, we always encourage engaging in between session practice. So like Cindy Jane was just indicating, really emphasizing the daily practice of relaxation and then rating the tension before and after to see any changes that you may notice, even if it's subtle. And then really engaging in one pleasurable activity before next session. So we've gone over how pleasurable activities can be a helpful emotion-focused coping strategy. So really looking into maybe something new and different that you could engage in between sessions, and then also rating the degree of pleasure you feel from engaging in that activity on a 0 to 10 scale. So 0 being least pleasurable and 10 being most pleasurable. Oftentimes, I encourage people to think back to hobbies or activities they've enjoyed as a child, and really getting back into what those might be because you might still enjoy them in them today. And then the last in-between session practice is looking at that diagram we had in the last couple of slides where there might be a situation in between sessions that is stressful, and just breaking that apart into aspects that you can control, what problem-focused coping strategies you might use in the controllable stressful situation with the goal to find a solution to decrease the stress. Then on the other side, looking at things that you can't control. And with the things you can't control from that stressful situation, really looking at the emotion-focused coping strategies with the goal to decrease negative emotions caused by that stressful situation. Does anyone have any questions about that?
Okay, well, if anyone does not have the slides or participant manual that we use for these sessions, I believe Cindy would be happy to share those with you. And she's also going to be sending out the recording for the passive progressive muscle relaxation exercise for all of you to use this next week and forever. So, yeah.
Actually, I did send that out earlier today, so if anyone didn't get it, just let me know.
You're so on top of it, Cindy. We're very appreciative of you. Okay, great. Well, we really look forward to seeing you all for our last session, which again focuses on social support
And self-care.
Yeah. So we will see you all next Thursday from 7 to 8.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elena and Sydney Jane, and everyone else for joining us this evening, and we will talk to you next week.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye, thanks.